Hey, what's up, friends? My name is Jeff Heath. I am a photographer and filmmaker from Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Welcome to my channel. And today we're doing something I haven't done before. I'm going to take a year in review and go over some of my favorite videos and photos from this past year, 2024, and share a little bit of a story behind each photo or video with you guys and tell you how it came to be and the story behind the photo. So let's jump into it. All right, so this first series of photos and videos is something that I've wanted to do since I moved to Vancouver Island 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it is, and that is to take part in the annual herring spawn down island in the middle of the island in Comox Valley. There is a wonderful event that happens every single year where these tiny little fish, they're about maybe 10 centimeters long, called herring, come to spawn on the shores of Vancouver Island and on the west coast of British Columbia. They are a keystone species here on the west coast, and unfortunately, because of their decline, we've seen a lot of decline in other kinds of things like salmon, and salmon leads to orca, all those kinds of things. Everything is intertwined, interconnected, but the good news is we've seen some herring spawns popping up in places they haven't been in a long time, like Port McNeill has had a spawn in the last 2 years, which has been very encouraging as well. So it is a natural wonder of the world to see these fish spawning. And because they are a food source, we have tons of animals coming out of the woodwork in order to feed on these tiny little fish or the things that feed on them. So I headed down to Comox to meet with my good friend Peter Dick, who runs the SS Fun Ship. And I spent 3 days with him out on the water and captured some incredible moments out on the water, which includes one of my favorite moments I've ever captured, which was an orca just full on, full send right out of the water. It was one of my favorite moments of last year. It was one of the first videos I had on my TikTok and Instagram to go semi-viral, which was very fun as well because it was an incredible moment and experience to see this orca just flying out of the water. So for everyone who watched that, thank you very much. And the photos from that weekend were super fun to capture, to be with a bunch of different other creators, other photographers, other naturalists to take part in the herring spawn in Comox, Hornby Island, Denman Island. It was very cool. So that was highlight number 1. Let's jump into the next one. This next highlight was not work related. It was actually a birthday present for my wife. She blessed me with a trip to Portugal with her and my best friend and his wife. And we were able to go to Portugal for my 40th birthday. And Portugal wasn't even on my radar in regards to a place to go in the world. There's so many other places I would have thought of to go first before Portugal. Let me clarify something. Portugal should be on your top 5, top 10 list of places to go and visit. It was one of my favorite places I've ever visited. Portugal was beautiful. The people were great. The food was great. It is cheap to stay and eat and travel there while you're there as well. And we just had a great time. It's not nature related per se, but it was awesome. I brought my little X100, my Fuji X100. That's all I brought in regards to camera, and my phone as well. And I was able to take some photos and snaps of our friends and some of the things that we saw, but definitely a highlight of the year. So if you've never been to Portugal and you're looking for some place to go in Europe specifically, I would highly recommend going to Portugal. We had a great time. This year as well was exceptional for opportunities to see the Northern Lights. We are on the northernmost point of Vancouver Island, and even though we're up there in regards to latitude, we're still not way up there like the Yukon or northern BC and northern parts of Canada where the Northern Lights are on full display very often. We don't get them as often, but this year seemed to be like more and more opportunities to see the Northern Lights. There just seemed to be an explosion of them this year. And I got a little notification on my phone one night saying that there was a high chance and high probability of seeing the Northern Lights. So I hopped in my truck and headed up a mountain, and I got one of my favorite shots of the Northern Lights I ever got. And I was also able to do a time lapse of the Northern Lights, which is always super fun to see, just like how the aurora just moves through the sky. And it was really cool just to see it. Literally just a 10-minute drive outside my door, popped up on top of this mountain, and it was able to overlook Port Hardy and get the Northern Lights. So really cool natural event that happened here on the North Island. This summer was also amazing for me in regards to just my own personal time out on my little boat or with friends with boats to capture some of the wildlife here on North Vancouver Island. There was a humpback whale and its calf hanging out near one of the beaches I frequent with my family just to walk, and it was very exciting just to be able to watch and observe this humpback whale right from shore. So I decided one morning that I would go out in my boat to go see if I could get photos of this humpback whale a little closer. And so what I did was headed out early in the morning, and my goal was this humpback whale had been lunge feeding a lot. And what lunge feeding is that the whale will come under some feed, usually some small fish, some krill. They'll come up underneath them with their mouth wide open and come out of the water like this, and essentially put all of this feed in its mouth. And I'm not sure if you know this, but humpback whales actually, their throat is only the size of a grapefruit. So they actually, for such a big animal, they eat very, very small feed. So they come up, but they'll eat a lot of it. So they'll scoop in a whole ball of fish if they can, herring like we talked about, into its mouth, or krill most likely. And they use their baleen to filter out the water, and then they swallow their thing. So this humpback whale had been doing a lot of lunge feeding that we had observed from shore. So I'm like, okay, a bucket list shot I want to get is a humpback whale lunge feeding, because I've only seen it from a distance, had never seen it up close and personal. And no joke, within like 30 minutes of finding the whale, it was lunge feeding like crazy. And within that first 30 minutes, I got my shot. I got the shot I wanted of this massive humpback whale lunge feeding with the shore in the background and its calf kind of doing its thing. But then the most incredible thing, another bucket list shot I wanted to get was, I'm not sure if you've ever seen a humpback whale, but a humpback whale is the size of a school bus. They are massive, massive animals, and they breach. They actually come out of the water, full send out of the water. Most of the time it's like a belly flop kind of thing, not too high. But this mama humpback whale just launched itself out of the water right after I got the lunge feeding shot. I was actually taking pictures of the calf, and all of a sudden mom came out of nowhere. I just happened to have my focus in the right spot, and I got this amazing shot of this humpback whale just launching out of the water with this gray kind of foggy background. It was a dream come true. I literally lost my mind. Another fun moment was going out with my friends at Seawolf Adventures in Port McNeill. They are an Indigenous-run business, and what they do is they take you out to their traditional territory in order to show you different wildlife, their traditional territory, explain to you their culture and all these different things. So it's not only just a wildlife viewing experience, but it's also a culture experience. So if you ever want to go on something that's a little bit more than just a wildlife thing, I would highly recommend checking out Seawolf. But the cool thing that happened with them was my friend Kim and I were working with them on a project for a tourism piece. And within, again, 10 minutes of us being out on the water, we ran into a pod of northern resident orcas, which are salmon eaters, and they happened to be feeding. And it was this beautiful kind of just like flat, calm, glassy kind of morning. The sky was like a little pink still from the morning. We had a nice little fog and mist in the background, and these orcas just happened to come by our boat as we were coming by. I got a couple snaps of them with the nice morning sunlight, and then they turned, and there's a big mountain range which you can see from North Vancouver Island onto the mainland, and the biggest peak on there is a mountain called Mount Stevens, or Quay as they call it here in Kwakwala, and the orcas just position themselves under this mountain, and with the pink little hue in the air, and the foggy mountains and Quay in the background and these orcas, fins coming out. It was a beautiful moment, and again, just right place, right time, and felt so thankful for that moment as well. I keep on saying I'm thankful and grateful, and I am, because all these moments are like, they go like this, and when you're done, you're like, I can't believe that just happened. So super fun moment to see these orcas doing their thing, feeding, and then also, deciding, hey, you know what I'd like to do is I'd like to get a portrait with Jeff Heath. So they set that up, and it was nice of them. Thanks orcas. That was really nice of you. During the same time when the salmon are coming to spawn, all of our rivers fill up with salmon that are heading up to do their thing. And with the salmon comes, again, wildlife, just like the herring. The salmon bring out a lot of wildlife. And there's a river here I like to go to because it is a great gathering point for black bears here on Vancouver Island. I was out on my boat one evening and decided to go over to this river, and I saw 2 to 3 bears that were just hunting for salmon in the river, and I got some nice evening light shots of these bears that were fishing for salmon. And it's always fun to watch bears doing their thing. For the most part, they know you're there, but they ignore you for the most part as long as you're keeping your distance. And I was shooting this all with a long lens from my boat in the water, so they were pretty comfortable and doing their natural thing of eating and plumping up for the winter. So super fun moment with these bears out on the water while they're doing their thing on the river. So I mentioned one of my bucket list shots was to get a humpback whale breaching. And so I got that shot. And then a week later, I was out on a boat with some other friends on another tourism project. My friends over at Sea Smoke Whale Watching out at Alert Bay. And they took us out, and we were having a wonderful day. Again, we saw orcas, we saw lots of humpbacks. And then all of a sudden, we were like kind of coming back in, and in the distance, we kind of see a big splash. And they're watching, and then there's another big splash, and then another big splash. And there was a mom and her calf, and the calf just, for whatever reason, decided it just wanted to have a little jump fest out on the water. And we watched this calf. It probably lunged and jumped and breached maybe 20 to 30 times while we were watching it. Just like full send out of the water, full body out of the water. There were some kayakers coming out of Telegraph Cove who got like an incredibly close show to this humpback whale doing its thing. And so that was super fun to see. The sad part about it was that a week after we saw this, the calf was actually struck by a boat. That boat was coming back into the harbor, and it didn't see the humpback whale for some reason, and there was a whale strike. Thankfully, the calf seemed to be all right. There was some prop marks on its back, and but thanks to the wonderful people at MERS, the Marine Education Research Society, here on North Vancouver Island, they were able to monitor the whale and make sure that it was fine. So thank you to all of the people that work there and take care of all of our wonderful sea mammals and sea creatures up here on North Vancouver Island. So if you see a blow, go slow. That's the rule when you're out on the water, if you didn't know. Last highlight of the year was going to Uganda in Africa. I hadn't been to Uganda before. I've done lots of travel and trips to Africa before, but never been to Uganda. I went with an organization called Classrooms for Africa, and what they do is they provide funding for people in Uganda and different places in Africa to build schools. And so what they do is they don't actually build the schools, but what they do is they help provide part of the funding in order for the community to come together, rally, raise their own funds. Education is key to furthering development, furthering people's prosperity, furthering a lot of different things in regards to progression. And so they do this wonderful work in Africa. I love being a part of the trip. But a highlight of that trip, outside of seeing all of these wonderful, happy, smiling faces, was to go on a safari. And we went on safari. We got just absolutely dumped on in rain in probably our first hour there. So we were soaking wet. We did see a lion right away who happened to be injured. She was collared in order that they could track her, but she had been attacked by a warthog and had a bad injury and cut on her back leg. So they had her collared just to make sure that they knew where she was. So we got a couple shots of her, which was super neat to see. We saw some elephants right away, but again, it was pouring rain. So we kind of puttered around the park a little bit, getting animals here and there, but we were pretty cold and miserable for a little bit until it started to warm up and the rain let off. But then we ended up doing a boat trip on a river here. We ended up doing a boat trip on a river in Queen Elizabeth Park, and we were able to very quickly encounter some elephants that were coming down to the water to have a drink. And I have never been so close to a wild elephant before in my entire life. Once again, they knew we were there, obviously, just like the bears that I was talking about, and we kept our distance. I had a long lens, but we were pretty close to them regardless. And it is just amazing to see these massive, massive animals doing their thing, taking care of each other. So super fun to see that, just chilling by the river. And then another cool, very fun highlight was to our guide said, hey, we've seen a hyena in this hole, hiding in this hole here on the side of the river. So we kind of stopped the boat and backed it up into reverse. And he kind of did a little hyena call, I would say. I'm not sure how else to describe it. Kind of did a little yip and call for this hyena. And all of a sudden you kind of just saw these eyes pop out of this dark hole. And then all of a sudden this hyena emerged out of this, riverbank wall and kind of stared at us for a little bit and then walked off into the bushes. So super fun to see a hyena. I never thought I would see that, especially on the side of a river. So super fun. What a great trip. Loved going out with Classrooms for Africa. And who can complain about going on safari? And then we ended our trip just the way we started. We got dumped on with rain. We heard that there was a pride of lions somewhere, but we ended up not finding them because we were getting soaked again. Anyways, that's my highlights for 2024. I hope that was fun to listen to and share some of the stories of things that I've seen and things that I've done this past year. Looking forward to 2025, have some fun things planned for this year. Looking to do some more teaching and training with people hands-on in person. So if you are on North Vancouver Island or anywhere around, we have some workshops and tours coming up this year that you can be a part of. We'd love for you to do that. And by we, I mean there's going to be me and some other photographers and creatives that are going to be doing some things this year. Anyways, that is all from me. Let me know if you'd like me to do more of these things, kind of the behind the scenes or the story behind the photos. I love talking about the adventures that I go on, and hopefully you like hearing them. So remember to
subscribe, and I'm going to make some more videos. And if you don't subscribe, I'm going to kill you. So I didn't mean to say I'm going to kill you. I just meant I'm not going to make any more videos.